Do you ever feel like no matter how much effort you put in, your creative process is just chaotic? Like you're always just a little off balance? It's not about talent or motivation. It often comes down to just a few simple habits that can totally shift how you feel as a creative. Today, let's talk about 4 habits that can just clear away that mental clutter. And these 4 habits will give your creative work the energy and focus it deserves. First off, think about how you start a new project. Most of us just, dive right in, right? We want to see where our inspiration is going to take us. But then life just kind of gets in the way. Meetings, emails, TikTok, and suddenly that great project idea, it's completely derailed. If you're constantly starting and stopping your creative work, you really make it hard to keep up momentum. And then you end up with a bunch of half-finished pieces or rushed ideas. What if, instead, you gave each creative task a dedicated time block, a clear home in your schedule? This is called the calendar habit. By carving out specific time slots, you set yourself up to fully focus on just one task without interruption. And this is important. You need to be specific about the task. This is not a time slot to work on a project. It's a time slot to work on a task. And that task might be something you do for multiple projects. Like, for example, if you're a painter, you might want to block out an hour preparing canvases for your next 3 paintings. If you're a YouTuber, maybe Wednesday mornings you dedicate 2 hours to writing your next 5 scripts. And when the 2 hours are up, you stop. The author Henry Miller had a detailed writing schedule, which included blocking time for specific tasks. The morning was dedicated to writing, he read books in the afternoon, and the early evenings were for taking walks and observing the world around him. When setting up your calendar habit, be very specific about the tasks you're blocking off time for. Don't just say, work on Project X. Instead, schedule time for concrete subtasks like research reference images or sketch out thumbnail ideas or write the script for the intro. And when you're this specific, it will help you stay focused and make the most of your creative time. Also, you gotta schedule these time blocks in advance. You gotta treat them with the same priority as any other important appointment in your calendar. So set a timer at the start of the block, and when it goes off, stop what you're doing. No matter how, in the zone you feel. You gotta respect those hard start and stop times, because that's key to maintaining your momentum. And here's a bonus. Setting that hard stop for each time block helps you mentally, file away your ideas. So when you do get back to them, you can easily just jump right in. It's like giving your creativity its own personal space to thrive. Okay, next, we've got to talk about how you're managing your energy. Have you ever noticed how some work just feels exhausting, even though you're barely making progress, while other times you're completely in the zone? For creatives, hitting that zone, sometimes called a flow state, is key. But if we're stuck in a rut, it can be really hard to get to that flow state. So what's the shift? Well, aim to make your work environment or your approach more energizing, or both. And you can do this by using the feel-good productivity habit. As creatives, it's not optional. We have to feel good about our work to be our most creative. One way to use the feel-good productivity habit is to try changing up your workspace. You could rearrange your office or even try a new location for your work. If you're a podcaster, for example, and you always record in the same studio, try recording something on location. Tim Ferriss, for example, will occasionally schedule a walk with his guests rather than sitting in his normal studio. But also, you could add a little bit of fun and whimsy into how you make your content. Like, for example, how Mr. Who's the Boss has been adding references to Rick Astley into just about every video for the last few years. Yes, he's been constantly Rick-rolling his viewers. And so this is a running joke with his subscribers. And speaking of subscribers, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. Why not do it right now before we move on to the next 2 habits? All right, on to a big one. If you're like most creatives, you're probably deep into a big project right now. Maybe a series of paintings, a new podcast season, or a huge video edit. And it's easy to get so immersed that we don't think about anything else. And though, as a creative, that you need to experiment. Heck, that's one of the most fun things about creating. But we let the big project get in the way. Instead, you should try out the experimental habit. Treat each new project as a mini experiment. Now, this doesn't mean completely overhauling your process each time. Instead, try finding small areas, just little tiny ones where you can add something fresh. If you're a guitar player and you're absolutely sick of practicing scales, find ways to change things up. Instead of playing the scales clean, throw on some effects, or play them as slowly as possible, or practice the modes based off those scales. Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine dedicates hours of practice time learning the ins and outs of just one of his guitar effects pedals. And little changes like these don't derail the main project, but they expand your skill set, and they might even spark new ideas for the next thing you want to create. Finally, one of the easiest traps to fall into is getting so tied up in our creative process that we lose sight of the bigger picture. When we're always moving from project to project, it's easy to forget to step back and take a look from the 50,000 foot level. We need to make sure that what we're creating still aligns with our goals, our audience, and even our personal values. If you're spending time on projects that don't align with your personal why, you're wasting time, and you're also at risk for massive burnout. To prevent this, you need the alignment habit. Make it a habit to realign your projects regularly. Take a moment every week or maybe every month to look at what you've been working on. Ask yourself, does this still fit with where I want to go? And when you make a habit of realigning, it helps you keep on track. That way, every new project has a clear purpose. And when you know that your creative output has meaning, it fills you with energy so that you can keep going, even through the more challenging parts. To make the alignment habit a regular part of your creative process, just set aside 30 minutes at the end of each month to review your recent work. Look at the projects you've been focusing on and ask yourself a few key questions. Does this work align with my broader creative goals and vision? Is it connecting with my target audience in the way I hoped? Does it still excite me, or am I starting to feel disconnected from it? Jot down your reflections and use them to inform your plans for the upcoming month. Maybe you realize you need to pivot your focus a bit or move away from certain ideas that aren't working for you anymore. This will keep you pointed in the right direction. All right, thanks, and see you next time.